So, and I've known Randy for a while, and I've just learned so much from him, and I just would, I'm delighted to have the chance for you to get to know him. If probably the most of you found me through the Without Bound documentary made by Michael Tubbs, a master video maker. And so you know Randy already. You're familiar with him from there. So Randy, I guess we'll just kind of pick up where we left off, except we'll focus on you and get to know you a bit, because you're someone we need to get to know. So how long have you been on the road?
40 years.
40 years! Which
is the title of my book.
What a coincidence.
40 years a nomad, yes. Go ahead.
And you know, there are a number of people watching this video that aren't even 40 years old. A number. And so you've been on the road longer than they've been alive.
True enough.
True enough. And how did you end up on the road? I guess that's the next obvious question.
Sort of tapered into it. I read, I was inspired by Henry David Thoreau in his book Walden, and he says in there, why would you spend all of your life working in order to have a little bit of freedom at the end of your life when, if you could learn to live efficiently, you could adventure on life now? And he did. He drifted down rivers. He walked all the way to Plymouth, Massachusetts. And so I thought, well, I could do that. I can live cheap. So I've been living cheap for 40 years.
And you know, that's also a philosophy I've adopted for myself, that I can always make more money. I can never make more time. And so I'm using the time I've got right now, like it's not coming up. But here's the counter argument, and the argument people ask me all the time. What are you going to do when you're old? Although you're kind of getting there now.
I guess so. Well, sometimes I imagine myself getting the bad news, you know, that I've come down with something fatal, in which case I think I will try to be courageous and off myself. I don't want to be a pain in the ass, and I really don't deserve a lot of expensive medical treatment, and besides, I hate that. So, but at the rate I'm going, I spend so little money, I can see all my way to my 90s, unless, you know, the world inflation goes out of hand or something.
And so, do you mind if I ask you, how are you supporting yourself for the last 40 years?
Well, I have a poem on the subject.
Okay, I'd like to hear a poem.
People ask me this pretty often, how in the world did I sustain myself for 40 years? And so I wrote a poem. It's called A Bucket Full of Freedom. Wealth is like a leaky bucket beneath a water spout. Running water is your income. Expense is leakage out. And the measure of your wealth is, how long could you hold out if some sad misfortune turned off the water spout? Now, most folks focus on the spigot, seeking increase of the flow, but I focused my attention on the leakage down below. I have sought to plug my bucket, reducing my expenses, holding in my savings like a cowboy mending fences. With patience, I waited for bargains. I didn't count on lady luck, lived well below my means, getting bang for every buck. And when the water rising in my bucket reached that calculated mark, I left behind all drudgery and flew off like a lark. So I think my wealth is great because my needs are small, and I won't have to work again with any luck at all. Money can purchase freedom if you have the guts to buy it. I know folks with beaucoup bucks too afraid to try it. But I have purchased freedom with the savings in my pail, and down highway seas of adventure in my land yacht I will sail.
Very good, thank you. And that poem must be in your book.
It's in my book.
So folks, if you missed that, read his book.
And it can be purchased from Amazon for $1.
$1.
Download it, or you can buy it from Blurb for $6.
And folks, you know, I have people tell me, oh man, you guys are just out here to make money on us. You're just out here to make money on them.
No.
For $1, you're not going to make a lot of money on them.
I don't care, but I really...
I know. And I do. I make money on my website and things, but no, I'm out here. I hope people can see my heart beyond that, and I know your heart, and that your goal is never to make money on anybody.
And I know yours.
Yeah. So, so how did you accumulate the money to begin with? Because you had to fill that bucket pretty full.
True. I flipped a couple of houses.
You just found something you knew and you could do.
Yeah, I found an old abandoned house in New Orleans, an old abandoned mansion, columns and all. It was in terrible shape, but I fixed it up, and 5 years later I sold it and made my first 50 grand.
And then you did that one more time?
And then I did it one more time, yeah.
And tell me if we're prying too much. So you had like 100 grand in the bank.
A little over 100 grand. I inherited another 30. And so at 130 grand, I've been able to coast all these years. I still have most of it left.
But that was back in the 70s?
It was, yeah, and I got 16% interest then, and now I get 0% interest. And so I'm dying a little bit, but I die only at the rate of about $300 a month.
You live on $300 a month?
No, I get $200 a month Social Security.
Oh. Well,
so I live on about $500.
You live on $500 a month?
Thereabouts, yeah.
Well, you must be starved. Do you eat dog food?
No.
You don't eat dog food?
It's clear that I eat too much, whatever I eat. No. You know, what's really killing America financially is housing. And so the average American spends 47% of their take-home pay for a roof over their head, which is crazy. And so imagine if you could knock off 47% of, you'd have that money you wouldn't have to spend. If you can just, rent is in fact the big enemy.
It is, and going up really quickly right now.
Yes, it is. And the other biggie is, of course, medical care, and it just so happens that I served in the Army, and so I get that for free, so that takes care of the two biggies.
Yeah, those are the two biggies. If you can cover those, you're in pretty good shape. But it takes a lot of discipline to live on $500 a month.
Not really. Whatever I want, I get. It's amazing. I can sit out here for 2 weeks and not spend anything at all. That's pretty cheap.
So really, if you're not using self-discipline, self-control, which is most of us would have to do, maybe it's just an acquired habit that you've gained over the whole 40 years. You've just learned, I don't need to spend money. That
is the case. Yeah, and plus frugality is a fun game. I know people with a ton of money, and they practice the game of frugality, but, out of other reasons. They choose to have a low carbon footprint, and they care about the world. They know that we can't recklessly consume and have a decent world, so they're big on sustainability. My colleague CB drives this point home very often.
To live a low impact, low carbon, sustainable life?
Yeah, he asked, how many people could the whole world live the way you live? Well, they almost could live the way I live. I bet that's true for you too, isn't it?
The world would certainly be, the earth itself would be a far better place if they did.
Yeah.
Most of our environmental problems would just be solved right then.
Absolutely.
If everybody in America spent $500 a month, now the economy would collapse because it depends on consumerism, but the earth, the planet would be so far better off. And our great-great-grandchildren, who are going to suffer because of our consumerism, would be a million times better off.
So true.
And yet all we're doing is thinking about ourselves, on our economy and our country, and something we're so proud of.
True enough.
Although, okay, don't write in and say you're a commie. I love America. I think it's the best country ever made and will ever be. But we're going the wrong way right now. We need to make some real serious changes. At the end of that. Let's not talk about that anymore.
I love the philosopher in you.
So for 40 years you've been doing this, and you've just kind of developed a mindset of, I need to live on about this amount. You probably don't even keep track of your money, do you?
No, I don't. No, I just assume I live in a certain style, and so I don't have to think about it.
Well, the hard part for most of us is the switch, because most people have been so influenced by the consumerism of our country. It's deep down inside us. We want more, and we want better, and we want it now. But you don't have that, or you couldn't live on 500 happily live on 500 a month. what do you attribute that to? Or a better question, how can a person learn to live that way and feel and think that way? Any ideas?
Yeah, it's a values shift that's at the heart of it. I mean, if you ask yourself in a serious moment sometimes, what do I really enjoy? And the things that you really enjoy are really not expensive, like talking to a friend,
Yeah.
or camping in a beautiful place with a view like this. Wow, look at that. That's the Mogollon Rim up there, and I can see at least 100 miles of it from where I stand. And if you ask yourself, the challenge, the big challenge, believe it or not, is to generate meaning. And once you win your freedom, a lot of people go back to the rat race because they never learn how to generate meaning. And that's something that I've focused my attention on. And I have some ideas on the subject.
Well, can you elaborate then and tell us exactly what you mean? So here's the average Joe sitting at home. He's just worked like everyone else works. He's barely surviving month to month. What kind of meaning should he be thinking about?
Once you get free, meaning, here's a very brief summary of what meaning is. Meaning is the thrill of personal evolution. And I bet you can feel it in yourself. I mean, you were once on the streets of Anchorage, living in a van, and now you're the foremost philosopher, in my opinion, for this lifestyle. And so how did it evolve into being? Just step by step. It turns out that whatever we do has a feedback loop, and whatever you focus on, it becomes, we create little neural pathways. It's sort of like a car driving down a soft dirt road. After a while, the ruts get deeper and deeper and deeper. And whatever is really wonderful about anybody usually has to do with the focus, the ruts that they have engineered in their mind. And by the way, whatever is terrible about people is also a kind of a rut that they have done it enough, the feedback loop thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So you just set out on this new life with the idea that you're going to become a better person. Is it that blatant?
Well, I'm gonna live the good life. I'm gonna have fun. I started out with little adventures like I wanted to do the Huckleberry Finn thing down the Mississippi River, and I did it 5 times. I went from Memphis to New Orleans in a catamaran boat without any power, and it was a sailboat that was. And then just a little bit of adventure makes you hungry for more and more and more, and pretty soon, I've learned how to adventure cheaply.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that personal evolution and growth really is the key to this life, and I know it's hard to explain that to someone who's just been stuck in the rut. Society defines how we live, and we are in this rut, and we can't see any other way. But if you can get out of the rut somehow, and that's not easy, it takes some real courage. Yeah. And you can see there's a whole other world, Plato's cave. You're looking at the shadows, you're chained to the shadows, and that's all you can see, but there's a whole world out behind you. To me, and I agree so 100% with what you're saying, I am changed at the cellular level the person I was 10 years ago. That person's gone. Although I can still see him around. He kind of bangs around in my head sometimes. It pops up and I get angry and the old feelings come back. But you know what I attribute a lot of it to, and I understand the idea of the neural pathways. I think it's the connection to the nature is a huge part of it. It's certainly not all. There was a Native American chief, one of his famous quotes, and I've forgotten his name, was that apart from nature, man's heart becomes hard.
So true.
Very, very true. And there have been, and I really love science, sounds like you do too. And I've studied a lot of the science of nature's impact on the human psychology and psyche and physiology. And there's a huge amount of research showing today that connection to nature or disconnection from nature has a huge impact on who we are. And I think a lot of it is you just come out here and sit and watch this view long enough, you're going to become a different person. Want to or not.
Absolutely.
And then on top of that, you have a personal desire to grow and be a new person.
True.
And have been working on it for 40 years now.
Yes, which is one reason why I camp with. I try to camp with my best friends. I'm also persuaded. I don't know whether you're persuaded of this, that the people you have around you, it can enrich you amazingly. So I've lived communally for 17 years, and I was so charmed by that lifestyle. It always needs a little tweaking, but the ideal community is one like we have here. Like you know, she has all the privacy that she wants over there, and and yet whenever she feels the need for company, I mean, here I am 2 or 3 steps away, you know, and there's that one and that one and that one, and different personalities, each of them, and each one of them is a rich personality. They charm me and make me smarter. CB's going to make me thinner somehow or another. He's gonna,
Magic? I didn't know he was a magician.
Maybe. And by the way, we both could use a little work.
Oh, I'm afraid, well, that's forbidden. We can't talk about that. Oh, no. We're stopping right now on this whole train of thought. But no, you're absolutely right.
Cody's not fat.
No. Well, I'm careful with him. I'm not so careful with myself.
Yeah.
You know what that sounds like? That sounds like I love him and not myself enough. I love him enough to deprive him, but I don't love myself enough to deprive myself.
It wouldn't surprise me at all if you loved Cody more than yourself.
I would say there's no doubt about that. Yeah. So, I don't know, maybe, I'm asking, one thing an interviewer should never do is ask a question if he doesn't know the answer. Have you given any thought what it would take for a person today to head out on the road? For you, you thought it was $150,000. Is that about right?
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Have you given thought to what it would take for a person today to head out on the road, a young person, and never work again?
Well, I know someone who's doing it, and he managed to have. He has his rig and 25,000, and he tries to figure out a way to make money, and in small, tiny ways he does. He does counseling by means. He's a very smart guy, and he does counseling with what do you call that? Skype.
Oh, Skype.
Over Skype, yeah. And I have a bunch of other friends who don't have a big stash of money, but they can live cheap, and so they're inventing little ways to make money. There's this couple called Technomadia, and they do a seminar on 50 different ways you can make money on the road. One person in our group does bookkeeping from the road, and others have their own little gigs. It's possible to actually to get on the road and make a living.
It is. Yes, it really is. And you haven't had to, because you were fortunate and you came up in the 70s. It was a different time. You could make 16% interest. You could save $150,000 and then live on it.
Right.
Today, that really is not so much. Well, you can't get 16% interest.
And now I'm slowly dying at a rate of 300 to 400 a month or so. But you know, at that rate, I'll still make it to my 90s. I have a poem on that subject too.
Sure, let's hear your poem.
It's what's on my tombstone. You know, is here lies the remains of Randy Vining, a man who died with perfect timing. Philosopher, poet, and gadabout, he died the day his money ran out.
That's a pretty good poem.
Yeah.
So, after 40 years, do you have any regrets?
None at all.
Zero, boy.
None at all. I'm sort of I'm pleased at the way my being has evolved. Not everyone in my family, and my sister thinks I'm crazy. You know, and an old friend thinks that I must be a sociopath to live like this. But I'm comfortable in my skin. I sleep well, and I never have bad dreams. Wow. That's always a good way.
And what a bank of memories you must have
Yeah.
of the last 40 years.
Oh, it is true.
You know, and even if you get old and sick and you can't be out living the life you want someday, God forbid, you got a bank full of memories that'll get you through, and probably photos and family and friends and connections that will get you through whatever remains at the end of your life.
Well, I hope you're right. Whenever Walt Whitman got old, he never had any money to amount to anything. His friends in Cambridge, Cambridge, Massachusetts, yeah, um, took care of him. They came by, they even made a little carriage for him and drove him around town. Somehow, maybe I've generated enough love by that time that people will care about me. And then if life gets miserable, I'll just off myself.
Yep. That's exactly my plan. I'm still quite a bit further away from, hopefully, I'm a long ways away from that. But yeah, that's definitely my plan. And I know to the audience that just sounds horrible. You're going to just kill yourself? But if you've lived a full life, another Native American saying I really love is that today is a good day to die.
Yeah.
And every day is a good day to die.
I think it's courageous, and I have contempt for people who whimper their way into the grave. I'm thinking, especially if they suck up millions of dollars in tax money to do it. I mean, I would be embarrassed and ashamed to do that.
And knowing you're going to die anyway.
Yeah.
You know, that your quality of your life is gone. That your probably life is over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hope I will be able to walk the walk whenever the time comes.
Right. It's easy to say it now while we're young and having a great time.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and along those lines, my personal philosophy is to adopt different people live for different things. You mentioned people who live for their old age. They give up their whole youth to 40s, 50s, the prime of their life, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, hoping to have some really great time at the end. Because they fear an unpleasant old age. That's their whole motivation in life, to have a good old age. And they're not going to be die young. My dad lived that way, planned ahead, retired at 60, never had to think about money again. He was wealthy, really. And at 62 he was dead, never enjoyed a bit of it.
Wow.
And so that lesson said to me that I live not for my old age, the last 20 years of my life, which is what most people are doing. I live for the last minutes of my life, that there will be no regrets. A life with no regrets. I will not look back on my life and say this was an unlived life.
Wow.
And I will die chock full of memories, just like you will. And so that's my motivation in life, is to die with no regrets in a life full of
I
memories.
like that. I live for my last few minutes.
I live for my last few minutes.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. My whole plan in life is the last few minutes when I'm going to say, I am ready to go. What a good life I've had. So
that's pretty amazing, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so any last minute advice? We'll just close up here. Any final advice you can have for people out there who are watching? There's so many folks who are hoping and dreaming and just can't get over the final hurdle to do it.
If this lifestyle appeals to you, if being free appeals to you, it's doable, and it's doable in small stages, and it's doable as a feedback loop. You do a little bit of it, and it will teach you a little bit about how to do a little bit more of it, and more and more, and that's how it is. I tapered into it, and you can taper into it too. So that would be my thinking.
Maybe start with baby steps?
Yes, like that.
Did you come and go from it? Is that what you mean, tapered into it?
I did indeed, yeah. The only job I ever had was a probation officer in New Orleans, and I only worked 5 years at a job in my life.
Wow.
And the rest of the time I was flipping houses and so forth. But yeah, this is doable, and baby steps would be the way to go. I recommend that they read your column. Your blog has the best advice on how to do it. I understand you have a book that can actually teach people how to live in their car.
Yeah.
I have seen it done.
Yeah. You did it, didn't you, for a while?
I did it, yeah.
You lived in a car?
I did it in a car for a while. And you can make a car comfortable, as I'm sure you know. Strip out 3 of the seats, make a platform a bed. Happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, one more question. A lot of what stops people from coming and doing this is the sacrifices they're going to have to make. Have you made, and in the early days when you were learning, you probably did make some sacrifices. Of course, you started with a good nest egg, so that was less. Do you think you've made a lot of sacrifices to live this life?
Well, yeah. I mean, I never had the respect of my family, for example. Uh, you know, they feel a little differently now. I mean, ever since you and I were in a movie together,
Right.
my stock rose just a little bit. But that's a small thing. I mean, somehow or another, I'm happy enough. And I seem to have pretty well what I want. I'm comfortable, I have a good bed to sleep in and all that. I don't feel, no, I guess I don't feel short of anything, really.
Right. Okay. Well, Randy, thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing your poems and your wisdom. And I understand you have a book for sale?
Thank you. For $1, you can have this. You can have what I have to say. You can download it from Amazon, or you can buy it from Blurb for $6.
Right.
40 years a nomad. Thank you, Bob, for taking the time to interview me.
You're welcome. So there you have it, folks. This could be your life. I know it's scary. I know it seems hard, but if Randy can do it and I can do it, we're nothing special. And so many people around us that you're meeting on the channel, you can too. I really would encourage you to take some baby steps and make a few efforts and actually go do something. Start taking some actions. All right. So thanks, Randy, and we'll visit with you later.